All right, welcome everybody to our latest Live Motocross podcast as we talk all things silly season, off-season news, and preview the first round of World Supercross with Jason Thomas. Obviously, firstly, thank you to everyone for listening and supporting the website and these podcasts. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to thank our sponsors in Fly Racing and Firepower, starting with Fly Racing, who have just dropped their 2026 range, which raises the bar once again for performance and design. Built with championship proven technology, the new collection is all about control, comfort, and confidence on any track in any conditions. Leading the charge with the Formula S, the world's first off-road smart helmet. It's a game changer and a bold statement of Fly Racing's commitment to innovation. Ready to ride? Check out the full 2026 line at flyracing.com or your local dealers, and be sure to follow them online on social media at flyracing.global. Obviously, also big shout out to Firepower, who are teamed up with Club MX and many other heavy hitters in the industry. So be sure to check them out online and on socials to see why they're so highly regarded. Obviously, welcome JT. Thanks again for joining us, mate. It's been a bit of a no rest for the wicked week. Just talking to you now there, mate. Plenty of action. The next week's busy. The week after that's busy. Not really much of an off season going on, is there?
It's been nonstop, and I think you think I would know better by now because you go into the off season and you have this feeling that it's going to be slow and there's going to be a lot of time off and you're going to get to regroup and spend a lot of time in your own bed. None of that's really happening for me. I did get a few weeks. I think I was home for almost 3 weeks, so that was really nice. But yeah, the last week and the next two to 3 weeks are going to be pretty chaotic. So I don't think I'm going to have much time off until really getting close to Christmas. So I'm not complaining. I am very fortunate to get the opportunities I have, but it has definitely been a lot of flying and a lot more flying upcoming before we get into the holidays.
Oh, busy, mate. You got to respect it, though. That's for sure. And obviously, it seems like, Motocross of Nations was around a month ago, and that's absolutely flown by since then, mate. But so much to talk about this week. Obviously, lots of news dropping and really interesting things. I guess top of the docket would be the Deegan Fox announcement. Obviously, you've mentioned it quite a long time ago that it's in the works and, it's all happening, mate. But yeah, it's a pretty cool clip they dropped there to announce it with the shoot, sort of leaning into that edginess that he has and very much sort of on that sort of bad boy Deegan image and the attitude. Got the bling on the boots there. Pretty cool to get your thoughts on what you think, mate. Obviously, it's a big deal financially for him. Fox is really pushing the boat out. Just like a lot of the gear companies, like obviously Fly Racing, Alpine Stars, it's really elevating the level. And I guess with alongside something like this, you're in the game, mate. You know this kind of thing. Well, lots of custom gear will be on the way. Lots of merch drops for Deegan. Specifically, it's a real statement signing. And I guess would you say he's their number one athlete now with Rox and Prado? Obviously, some MXGP guys to be announced soon. He's probably the number one at this point, isn't he?
Yeah, and I truly think that they needed this move. When you look at their lineup and especially historically, they have always had a championship contender on the roster. That has just been a calling card of Fox Racing for decades now. And kudos to them for being able to execute it. I think it says a lot about their brand and the effort they put in and the willingness to invest at whatever cost to go out and get the athlete that they want. And when I look at their current landscape, uh, they kind of needed this because Ken Roxon is kind of the guy for them right now, and I think they had grand plans for Jorge Prado filling part of that gap in pro motocross and being a championship contender for pro motocross and possibly the playoffs. That really didn't come to fruition. So for them to plan for the future, to go out and get that quote unquote next guy, even though he's current, but they're thinking long term with him. I think it made a lot of sense. I really do. And as soon as someone mentioned, like, hey, he's probably going to do the Fox thing, I was like, that could not make more sense on so many levels. So, yeah, kudos to everybody involved. I'm sure it was a lucrative contract for Haiden, which he's certainly deserving of. I think they executed it well. The launch video was well done. I thought it kind of spoke to his brand and the way that they want to position him within their brand. The urban, like they are doing these supreme co-brands and things like that. There's a lot of synergy there with I think how they can position Hayden and their need. Like they need that type of rider right now. So It couldn't have come along at a better time for them. So again, it's my job to compete against them with fly racing, but I'm gonna be objective. And if I'm not objective, I'm probably not doing my job well either. So yeah, kudos to all of them involved for a job well done so far.
Yeah, mate, well said. Some really great insight there. And obviously, he's going to be debuting that gear on the race track this weekend alongside his 450 Supercross debut. I guess, how do you think it's going to go, mate? We've sort of touched on it, the expectations. Obviously, do you think it'll have any impact? You know, how much 450 Supercross he races in 2026. Obviously, fascinating to see how he fares. Good to get some racing back, some high level racing. And yeah, just what are you hearing and what are your thoughts on Deegan in 26 and Deegan this weekend?
Well, I think these next two races are interesting. And of course, I'm speaking of Argentina and then Australia because he has a big decision to make about his 450 and 250 Supercross plans. We all know, or we think we know, that he's going to debut the 450 in pro motocross, and that's a certainty. I feel very confident in that. The real question is, does he race the 450 in Supercross at all? And if that is a yes, then how did they position that? Do they put him in? And I've been told that he wants to race 250 East to win that last title that he doesn't have. That would be the only thing on a 250 that he does not have a championship in. So they want to have that. So every box is checked before he moves up. I understand that. I still spoke on Steve Mathis' show about this a little bit on Monday night. He's like, I don't know why that matters. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter that you don't care. They deem it to be important, right? And that I think it's a cool thing too. If you have that opportunity, why wouldn't you try to go get that? And he's like, well, you want to be riding motocross during that time. And I'm like, yes, sure, but I don't think it is going to be the deal breaker. And if you want to look like Brian is always looking at big picture legacy type things. That's how they've built this brand around Haiden. And look before that, look at the brand he built around himself with Metal Militia. That is how he views things as big picture, long term. We're brand building. Well, to brand build, you want to have every box checked and being able to say, hey, we moved up as one of the most successful 250 racers of all time. We won everything there is to win before the age of 20 years old. Like that's a pretty strong statement to make. Like you can market that statement, and that's what they do. They market Haiden really, really well. So let's say that he assumes that he wants to race 250 East. Now that opens a door to race Anaheim, San Diego, whatever you want on the West Coast on the 450 if you're so inclined to do that. The question is, are they going to feel he is prepared to go down that road? I don't know, right? There's no way to really answer that question other than how does he perform at these two rounds? If he goes out and is unbelievably great at these two rounds, I think the odds go up. How could you say the odds don't go up in that scenario, right? He's going to have to face the likes of Ken Roxon and Anderson. So he's going to get a relative gauge of how he's performing. If he goes out and he wins, I I think there's a really strong chance you see him racing Anaheim 1. If he goes out and he's not quite there, Roxon wins and he's kind of battling with those guys and Savachis and those. We'll see how Australia goes, but I think Brian would look at that and say, we're not ready because the expectation for him, maybe I could say unfairly, is going to be far too high. Like everybody, his fans, people around them are going to be expecting the world from him. And I don't know that that's necessarily fair. I would say it's probably not fair to expect the world from him, but that's what's going to happen. So they have to make a real judgment call based off of two rounds that aren't really Supercross. They're not up against all the competition, and the world's going to be witnesses to how that goes. To me, it's a really difficult setup all the way around for them. And I have to check myself on saying that. There's not a lot to be lost here. Like they're still making millions of dollars. Hayden's on top of the world. Like, but it's within a frame of making the right decision for Haiden. That's really all it comes down to is you want to put Haiden in the best situation and the best setup for success possible. And if they don't think he's quite ready to go out and compete and battle with Jet and Hunter and Chase and Tomac and all these guys at A1, maybe you don't put him in that spot. You let him go race the 250 East. He probably wins 250 East, and then he goes into motocross where he's extremely comfortable, and that's been the plan all along. So in the end, I don't think there's a yes or no answer yet. I don't think anybody could give you a yes or no answer yet. If you press Brian, I don't think he could give you a yes or no answer yet because they're going to use these two WSX rounds as a barometer and kind of see where he's at.
Yeah, he's definitely got the spotlight on him this weekend and, always. But yeah, it's cool that he's giving it a go. And yeah, we'll see how he stacks up in just a couple of days' time, mate, for sure. And obviously, you've recently been out, with KTM there. And I guess we'll start with Tomac, obviously, 2-year deal for him. He's 32 now. He's still going strong, isn't he, mate? He's had a couple of injury interrupted seasons. He's still really motivated. He wants to chase titles and chase wins. And he's ready to rumble, mate. And this will be a pretty cool project for him on the KTM. Essentially, he's their number one rider in Supercross, especially. Obviously, a lot of talk about the cable clutch and how KTM are going the extra mile for the prized asset in Tomac, and lots of bike work going on for him. And he's obviously not going to be at Baker's from what we're hearing. So he's obviously does his own thing, mate. So obviously, they're giving him the freedom and they're really putting their faith in him, KTM. So how do you think it all shakes out? And having just got back from being there and talking to Tomac, how is he?
Well, he's in great spirits. I can tell you that. Um, that's not that abnormal though. Change is refreshing for a lot of people. Sometimes though, if you get on the bike, well, say you get on a new bike and it's not what you want it to be, you can be a little bit downtrodden, but that decision would have been made over the summer. Like he rode the bike months and months and months ago. So this isn't a new scenario for him as far as like a guessing game as to riding the motorcycle. And I was more referring to if you're on a team and you're staying on the same team and they introduce a new model and it's your first time riding that new model and you just really don't like it, that's tough. Like that's a tough day because you have a lot of work to do and you've taken a step backwards with that model. This wasn't that scenario, right? I just spoke with him. I think he's happy with how things are going. He got that cable clutch that he really wanted. I know KTM is catering to him hand and foot, trying to make him happy. And I think, it's sometimes a change of scenery does a lot of good, right? It just adds some variety to your program. It doesn't feel stale anymore. It's, new people, new staff, new everything. And it kind of gives you a reason to wake up in the morning because there's so much newness around him. So I didn't get to watch him ride. I obviously watched all the same video clips that everybody else did. But I think with Eli, if he's in good spirits, usually good things happen because he's typically not in good spirits unless he's in a good situation, if that makes sense. Right? One kind of leads the other and they feed off of each other. His riding dictates his mood, but his mood is only good if he's riding really well, right? So if he's there and jovial and laughing and talking, then things are obviously going pretty well. So I like the setup for him, but I do have questions. And the questions come with he's never ridden an Austrian, never raced an Austrian bike before. Different engine package, different suspension components, different suspension technicians, different basically everything, right? Like every ounce of the motorcycle is going to be a different dynamic. And he has had very similar surroundings for a long time. Ricky Gilmore, his suspension guy, has traveled to different teams with him because he is so particular about his motorcycle that way. So without that, going to WP with different staff, with different internals, with just a lot of change to work through and adapt to. And I think that the older you get, you kind of get stuck in your ways and it's harder to be flexible with things you like or don't like. So my prediction kind of with Eli is I think there will be weekends where everything clicks and everything's fine. It's the weekends where it's difficult. The bike's not working the way he wants to. He doesn't have a ton of data to draw from because it's his first year on the motorcycle. And you can't just say, well, what is AP running? Eli's setup is so particular. He runs the rear really tall. He wants these very specific things with the motorcycle that he can't just say, well, give me what he's having, right? Where I think that is a big benefit to Jet and Hunter sometimes. If Jet can't get the motorcycle the way he wants it, he'll literally just say, well, give me what Hunter has, right? Or vice versa. They'll just run the other guy's setup and say, well, it must be working for him, so I'll just run that. That's not something that I think Eli's willing to do because his tastes are so unique and so particular. So I do think there will be weekends, both indoors and out, where he is doing a lot of searching to try to get the motorcycle to be compliant and do the things he wants it to do.
Yeah, it's awesome insight there. There's a lot to sort of water to go under the bridge before you know he's going to be completely comfortable. So they'll be working away pretty hard, a couple of months out from the start of the season for sure. And obviously, next man is Prado. He's got his move officially announced. It's been in the works for a while now, but he looks like he's on a 1 year deal there. The time is now for him, isn't it, mate? Obviously, pretty forgettable 2025. He'll be hoping this is the catalyst to get back to his best. He said already, obviously, they give a bit of lip service in these interviews, but he said everything's clicked with the bike. I guess he feels like he's back home and he plans on spending some time in California and on the East Coast at the Baker's factory. So that'll be an interesting dynamic to watch play out. And he's also said he's done some outdoor riding and he was happy with the suspension and the setup and also some Supercross days as well, mate. So all systems ahead for Supercross in 2026. And I guess the most important thing for him will be to actually get through the season healthy, which he wasn't able to do last year in Supercross. So big year ahead for Prado, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was able to speak with him as well. And he said he's going to spend most of his time in California. So I think he just feels comfortable being around the team with the California environment. Man, the weather was just out of this world there, so I completely understand it. And if you can handle living in California, you don't mind living there. It's comfortable. It's so convenient there, right? And it's a beautiful place to live. But a lot of riders want to be back in Florida and they family life and all these things. Like there's a lot of taxes, there's a lot of reasons to be in Florida. But if you choose to be in California and you're happy with it and you're on a factory team, life is very easy. I will just say that. You don't even have to take your motorcycle anywhere. You literally just you can have a car and you drive to the track, you show up, everything's there, the track's prepared, your mechanics there, the suspension technicians are there, everything is in place and ready for you to go about your business every single day. All you have to worry about is being the best racer you can be, physically, mentally, preparation wise. The team handles everything else. So I understand why he would want to be there. And also, one of the most important aspects of that is for him to have the suspension technicians there every single day, I think is going to be important for him. Where a guy like AP, he's going into his fifth season with the team. There's not a lot of change. There's not a lot of reason for him to be testing day after day after day. They're going to get some new parts in early December. They're going to try them, but kind of knows what's available. Like there's not a big kind of tidal wave of change as far as like what's going to be available. So AP can just go back to Florida and focus on putting his laps in where I think Prado really needs to be working with the team day in and day out. And I would even argue if Eli wanted to be in California all off season, it probably would be the best thing for him. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to want to be in Colorado until the weather is impossible to be in Colorado anymore. But I think for him on a pure racing level, him being in California every day of the off season would probably be the best setup possible. But life gets in the way. There's kids and families and responsibilities and all those things that he needs to be concerned with outside of simply testing every day with the team. But yeah, that's all the nuances of racing, right? If Eli was 21 years old, I can guarantee you where he would be every single day. And it would be in Murrieta and he would be at the practice track every day with the team. But that's what happens when you get older. Life doesn't always isn't always as conducive to what's the best possible thing for being a racer anymore.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff, mate. Definitely at different stages of their career and what they're gunning for. So great to watch them with interest as well. And I just wanted some words on the Bakers factory program, mate. Obviously, still a really strong and elite sort of setup there. Doesn't seem to have quite the same impetus as it had in the past, but still, obviously, the proven formula works. A lot of race winning, a lot of podiums, a lot of success going on there. Not quite as much hype and talk about it, but it's a no stone unturned approach, and it's not really for everyone. Like we've had discussions with BT about it too back in the day as well. And I guess there's been a more of a shift to guys doing their own thing now, hasn't there, mate? So just your take on, I guess, Baker's factory and just the way riders like to approach their sort of programs in general.
Well, to me, I think it's a little bit more nuanced. I don't necessarily think that, the shine has come off of Alden Baker's program. I don't necessarily believe that. But if you look at the years where Alden had the most success, it's when he was working with one of the absolute elite riders of the sport, and Roxon when he was in his prime, Villapoto, Dungey, Stewart, Carmichael, like just name them off. Right now, his deal is exclusive with Austrian brand riders. Okay. And they had Chase Sexton. Sexton did not want to be on that program, which, KTM was desperate to get Chase Sexton. So they were willing to allow that to happen. The same thing with Eli Tomac. They're willing to allow Eli Tomac to do his own thing. So I don't necessarily think that it's Alden's program doesn't work anymore. I just think he needs that elite rider. And I believe personally that if you take one of the best riders and they buy into Alden's program all the way, I think it can make them be their best self. That's it, right? And I think AP is doing phenomenally well. He's won a race in 2 Supercross seasons in a row. He was fantastic at Colorado. Like he passed Jet Lawrence straight up, right? So you see flashes of brilliance. Saw Malcolm Stewart win his first ever race in 2025. So there are reasons, like if you look beneath the surface, it's not like things don't work at all. I just think he's dealing with a very unique set of circumstances because he only has KTM or Husky or Gas riders. And if they don't have a championship winning rider that is willing to be on the program, well, you don't really have the recipe for success. You don't have the same recipe that he had with Carmichael, Stewart, RV, Dunge, go down the list of champions that he works with. I think if you take your pick, Jet, whoever, if Sexton would buy all the way in, and I mean all the way in, like you can't cut corners, you can't hem and haw about things. You got to be all the way in. And I was there. I was around Carmichael when he was there. I was around RV when he was there. They did everything that they were told to do. Were they complaining? Sure. Did they do everything that they were told to do? Also, yes. And I think when you have that elite level of talent and like a superstar guy that is all the way committed to a program and dedicated, I personally still think that that program will create the best results possible. I can't prove it. It's just what I happen to believe. I just think that the dynamic has changed a little bit where Alden is, I think financially, it was the right move for him to get involved with KTM on this front. It gave him a lot of financial security. It allowed him to build out the facility. I just think the formula changed a little bit about as far as who he was going to be working with moving forward.
Yeah, that's a really cool take on it all, mate. Yeah, it's definitely still an elite setup for sure. And I guess another man who's there would be AP. He's done some great work, like you mentioned there. Feels like he's been a bit of a forgotten man the last few months, obviously, with those health issues, sidelining him. But it's pretty impressive. He's now entering his 5th year on the KTM there. He's had a really good run with that framework there. Many highlights, obviously. 2025, he got 5 podiums in Supercross and got a second career victory. So really cool, mate. So hopefully he's healthy. And he comes out swinging again for 26. Did you manage to catch up with him, mate? Was he in fine form as usual? And did he live up to the tag as the best interview in the sport as per?
Well, AP's AP, right? And he says he's healthy now. I personally don't know if he truly knows yet. That's just my take. I'm not a doctor. I don't have any scientific evidence to back that up. But from what I did gather, he's 100% okay until he's not. And when his heart rate gets high and he gets a big adrenaline kick and all the intensity comes in and whatever, gets chemically produced by his body, that's when he runs into trouble. And you can't replicate that without being in the moment. So he feels fine all the time. until he puts his body under that duress and his body has to respond and all the chemical reactions happen. That's where he runs into trouble. So for him to say, yeah, I'm all good, when he really, from what I understand, they really never got 100% to the bottom of what was wrong. And maybe I'm not factually correct on that, but I was never given a reason of like, this is exactly what was wrong. This is the protocol. This was what we did to fix it, and now we're 100%. I have not ever heard that or been told that. So I still have some lingering questions about, is this going to be a problem or not? Like he pulled out of the Paris Supercross. He's only ridden 4 times. Those are pretty clear signs that everything's not perfectly okay yet. Um, as far as him as a person, his interview, everything was great. I'm just still a little concerned about when push comes to shove and you're traveling nonstop and you're putting your body through what it takes to go through boot camp and the season. Is he well? I don't know. We're gonna find out together. But I didn't leave there with, a catalog of reasons of why he's 100% now.
Yeah, a lot of question marks still for him heading into the season. The same applies for Juju. Obviously, still facing a lengthy spell on the sidelines. It's looking like pro motocross is the aim for his return. That very serious injury you've spoken about very insightfully in the past, mate. So, any update on him? Is he in good spirits? Because that was a pretty severe one, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was at the launch, but I did not interview him when I was down there. There are questions with Juju. I've talked to physicians that are very concerned about him coming back to racing and what the implications of that could be, what further injury could look like if he was to have a big crash or some sort of similar injury again. So um, I, yeah, I'm very concerned about what the future looks like for Juju. And again, I'm not medically trained or anything like that. I'm just in speaking to people that are, this was not a good injury long term, and the risk implications on the backside of this injury are not promising. So obviously hoping for the best for him, of course. Such a nice guy and so talented, and we're just really starting to see the breakout of his career in 2025. But the things I hear as far as injury wise were not very good.
Yeah, fingers crossed, the recovery goes as smoothly as possible for that one, mate, for sure. And obviously, next on the list, we'll go to Sexton Kawasaki, mate. That news has finally been announced as well. Give us your take on it all. Obviously, the cool shoot and the kit setup was dialed there, something different in Hawaii there, mate. So I guess now attention for him shifts to getting that bike absolutely dialed in the team and building a strong relationship. As like we've heard, the KTM one wasn't the strongest, never really fully gelled there. So it'd be cool to see, obviously, Motocross of Nations with Sexton and Kawasaki, hopefully on the cards in the future as well, because they haven't been hugely supportive of that recently. But there's a new regime running things with USA now as well. But yeah, it's kind of like a must-work situation in a lot of ways. He wants to build long term. He signed a 3-year deal from all reports, back with Monster Energy, training at Chambers Place. So there's a lot of things going on with Chase, and hopefully he puts it all together on the racetrack come A1 and 2026 as a whole.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with Chase. This is his third team in 3 calendar years, and I know that's sounds weird, but if you really think about it, at the end of 23 he was still in a Honda. 24 and 25 he was KTM, and now we're at the end of 25 and he's on a Cowie, right? So within 3 years he's switched. He's on his third team, and I think that really speaks more to Chase and the way he works and his mental kind of capacity. Capacity is probably the wrong word, but just where he is mentally, I think it speaks to that more than anything. It's very hard for me to believe that factory Honda wasn't in a good place when he won the Supercross championship, and you see the success of Jet and Hunter on the backside, right? I know he wanted to get away from the Lawrence program. That's fair, but I can't imagine halfway through the KTM campaign that he felt like that was a positive move. So he leaves Honda. He goes to Red Bull KTM for what I understand was less money. That didn't, even though he got a pro motocross championship along the way. So I don't want to say it wasn't successful, because winning a championship is, I would sound silly saying that, but I don't think it went necessarily to plan either. If it went to plan, he would still be there. I guess that's a fair way to put it. So now he leaves Red Bull KTM under not very good circumstances, and he left Honda under not very good circumstances. And now he's kind of where he was 2 years ago. He has all these big hopes and dreams and plans for how this Monster Energy Kawasaki thing is going to go. And I read where he said on Pulp the other night, like, I don't really want to switch teams again. But I think it's hard for anybody to square that when all we really know of the last few years is you switching teams and wanting to switch teams. Like him wanting to leave Red Bull KTM has that's not been a secret around the pits for quite a while, right? And him wanting to leave Honda, I think I first said something about that in the summer of 2022. He had signed an LOI with Red Bull KTM. He still had another year plus on his Honda contract, and he was already trying to leave to go to Red Bull KTM. So all I'm really saying is there's a pattern of behavior here that is not necessarily ideal for long-term continuity, and you're going to start running out of teams. And luckily for him, he's so talented that teams are willing to do whatever it takes to get Chase Sexton on their motorcycle. Because if he wasn't, if he was an average guy, a top 10 guy, but kind of so what as far as like, can he win a race or not? Probably not. Like if he was that type of rider, no one would go for this. Like you would not be able to bounce around, leave teams on really bad terms. That just wouldn't fly. Like teams wouldn't be willing to invest in you and go along for that ride. And I saw it firsthand with Chad Reed. Chad Reed left teams on bad terms at times. The only thing that saved him is he was so damn talented and he was one of the only guys that could win that people were willing to kind of turn a blind eye to it. And that's going to be the key for Chase is he's got to stay relevant. As long as he stays relevant, you can get away with whatever you want. You don't have to get along with anybody. Nobody has to really like you. But if that turns, those people are going to turn on you as well. And that doesn't mean that Chase is not a good guy. I really like Chase. He's always super nice to me. That's not what this is about. But when you leave Red Bull KTM and seriously, no one is allowed to talk to you on the team, but one person on the entire team because you don't want to converse with them. Like that's a really toxic situation. And teams, just like it was with Prado and Monster Energy Kawasaki, teams don't want that. They don't want to be around that, right? They want people that are going to be absolute beacons for their brand, and they're as a manufacturer, and they're paying this person millions of dollars to represent them. Think about that in the purest sense. We're going to write you a check for multi-millions of dollars per year to be our representative to the world, right? When somebody thinks about Red Bull KTM or Monster Energy Kawasaki, they're going to first think about you. And how do you portray that brand? Are you going to be up there with your hat on backwards and everybody knows that you're not happy with your surroundings? Or are you going to be smiling and everybody's thinking like, man, look how good of a representative he is for Kawi. I want to go buy a Kawasaki, right? Those are the things that I think about 10 plus years removed from racing. I didn't think about those things when I was racing, but they will. One day, Chase is going to look back and say, man, I was really not happy at KTM, but I probably should have handled things a little bit differently. Like those guys paid me a lot of money and I probably should have just smiled and went with it because, man, I'm going to be financially set for the rest of my life because of that. That is a very hard thing to square in the moment when you have so much emotion and someone who's really young still. And he's 25, 26. That's still really young as far as like worldly perspective. I truly believe one day he's going to look back and say, man, because I know I did this. I very much wish I had handled certain things differently. I think he's going to look back and say, I probably should have handled a few things differently.
Yeah, he'll be definitely hoping things go to plan, and there's definitely a lot on the line for Chase. So he'll definitely be one to watch for sure next year. And obviously his teammate Marchbanks, obviously that announcement was a little bit overlooked with everything going on this week. But yeah, interesting to see how he goes, mate. Obviously it was a logical and sensible move. Great opportunity for him being a bigger guy, getting this one as well. And we're hearing a little bit about his gear deal, but have you heard anything on that? What's going on there?
I think he's probably going to be in Fox because he was a Fox guy at PC. And I mean, the only reason I'm giving you that is because I haven't heard a word of him asking around. right? It typically, if someone's available for gear, whether they are seriously considering fly racing or not, I'm going to hear about it pretty quickly. That's just how these things work because they're going to see what the market will bear. Just like we had a call with Haiden Deegan's people. Were they ever considering being a part of fly racing? I don't know. That's not for me to decide, but he was on the open market and they're going to reach out to the main players. We haven't heard a word from Marchbanks' team, which means that Cowie probably just grandfathered him in somehow, some way into a Fox deal because of the pro circuit deal. That's not that uncommon. Would they kick him down some extra money because he's no longer on the team? Sure, but he doesn't have a ton of value anyway. I would fully expect him to be in Fox and just basically kind of grandfathered in from the program he was already on.
Yeah, nice stuff, mate. Yeah, and as we sort of move to the racing this weekend, World Supercross begins this weekend, which kicks off 5 races, 5 different countries and continents in 6 weeks. So pretty hectic schedule there, mate. Obviously, seen some first track images filter through there. It's obviously going to be interesting. Argentina and Canada back to back. Obviously, next weekend in Canada, and then the formats as well, mate. It sort of has that Super Pole, the 3 race mains, the short finals, sort of carnage inducing racing, short, sharp action. There's not a lot of rest time for the riders. So I guess there'll be a lot of action this weekend for the fans who are tuning in, across the globe and in person at the track, mate. So just your take on it. Are you excited about it, mate? The series has had its sort of ups and downs, but it looks like they're really trying to get that rider entry list and build some buzz and impetus even more so this year, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm keen to watch it. I think it's going to be interesting. They're okay. Is the level of competition all time high? No, but neither is it for Paris or any of these other off-season races. It never is, right? But they do have one of the best riders in the world in Ken Roczen, and I think Deegan is the saving grace. Like having Haiden Deegan there to make his 450 debut is going to have everybody's interest, whether you necessarily care about the rest of the race or not. It's in a pretty small soccer stadium, from what I can tell. I don't think it's like some grandiose venue with. It's just not going to be that. But they're going to have Deegan on a 450. That's all you need. That is literally all you need to make this event watchable on every level is to have Haiden making his 450 debut. So if you needed a reason to watch, I just gave you the only reason you'd ever need is let's see what happens with Haiden. Because if you told me he won, I would say okay. If you told me that he got a mid-pack start and Jason Anderson knocked him 17 rows into the soccer stadium, I would say okay, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty about how this thing is going to go, and I kind of want to see how he does. I want to see how his starts are. I want to see if the whoops are difficult. How does he look in the whoops compared to a guy like Kenny or a guy like Anderson that are really good in the whoops? And I just kind of want to see how he mixes it up with these guys. That remember, he's never raced with these guys. He's never raced against these guys before. So it's just going to be interesting to kind of see his mannerisms, his racecraft. What does he say? What does he do? How does he approach these guys if he has to pass them? Does he get aggressive? Is he kind of hesitant a little bit? Is he deferential? Like I don't know. Like there's a lot to parse through there.
Yeah, obviously at various different rounds, they've got a lot of different riders, and obviously throughout the series, we're going to see Tomac, Cooper, Webb, Roxon, Anderson. Obviously, we mentioned Deegan, and then you obviously got guys like Savachi, Craig, Hill, Vince Freeze on a Stark, mate. So, what's some of the other stuff you'll be looking out for in the SX1? Freeze on a Stark sounds like carnage, doesn't it?
It's going to be interesting because Vince is the dirtiest rider I've ever come across in my life. I say that without any hesitation. There's not even another rider that I would even put in the category. Now, if you want to talk about like guys like Bradshaw and Bob Hanna, that's a different era. So it was much more accepted back then. This is not then. Guys don't race like that anymore. So I'm grading on a curve a little bit when I say the dirtiest because no one does the things that he does. And I've been taken out by him more times than I can count. So I have firsthand knowledge of the way he races. And we were very similar in speed. So even when he wasn't taking me out, I saw him taking other people out. It didn't always have to be me. I'm very familiar with that man's work. And the only saving grace you had with him was you could kind of hear the motorcycle coming. Well, now you can't. He's he is going to be a silent assassin flying through the night, and people are just going to get ejected off their motorcycles and not be prepared for it. So if you were like a supervillain and you were drawing up like what's the worst possible scenario for the racing world that I can come up with. Let's put Vince Freezy on a bike that no one can hear. And then he's just going to go around cleaning people out with no warning. That's what this is going to be like. So it's fascinating for me that I don't have to deal with it. I can tell you that.
Oh, it's going to be box office, mate. It'll definitely be throwing a spanner in the works for many blokes, I reckon. And then you look down the list in SX2, Max Anstey, McElrath, Chisholm's still racing, Enzo Lopes, Park, Shock. There's a lot of talent in there too. Vialo, from what we're hearing, will be doing some rounds. There was some rumours that he won't, but then he put a post up. So SX2 will be a lot to look forward to as well, won't it?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see kind of where Anstey is. I think he's the favorite going in. Um, I would like to say that McElrath should be, but man, he just did not look very good in Australia. So does he kind of have a bounce back performance? I don't know necessarily if there was something going on with him or the bike or a situation, but when I compare and contrast his performances a year ago, whether it was WSX or Australian Supercross, he looked nothing like that guy. A year ago, he would have dominated the first and second round of Australian Supercross, and he was really not even close. Like he was barely in the top five. So I don't know necessarily what to make of that. If he's back on form, he can be in the fight. But I do think Anstey is the favorite going in.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that for sure, mate. And obviously a little bit of MXGP news. Obviously we had Valandrin announced for Ducati, Jago Hirtz going to Beta, and obviously Adamo stepping up to MXGP. So some interesting stuff going on that side as well, mate. Obviously plenty more announcements to get made. The silly season across the globe's been absolutely wild, and there's still some stuff to come, mate. But yeah, just your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think really the MX2 class is wide open. You have the returning Langenfelder, right? Like you have to say he's the favorite, but I think Sasha Kunin is going to be in the fight. And I think some youngsters have a real opportunity here to make a name for themselves because you take out Andrea and Kai right off the top. That's a big deal. Like there are going to be a lot of podium positions open, and Sasha doesn't always stay upright, right? So that could be another position that's up for grabs quite often. So I think it's going to be one of those transitional years in MX2 where we see a lot of new names and new faces on the podium quite often, where the last, let's say, 3 years, maybe more, it's kind of been rinse and repeat on the podium, the same guys over and over and over. And that's even adding Lucas Kunin in 2024. He was one of those guys as well. I just think if I was an 18-year-old MX2 upstart, a guy like Matisse Valland, I would be so excited about what potential there is for 2026.
Yeah, it's well said, mate. It's going to be fascinating to see that play out as well. And obviously, some final words Stuttgart Supercross as well this weekend, mate. Obviously, an event you're pretty familiar with racing over there. So, just any memories on that one, mate?
Yeah, I mean Stuttgart holds a special place in my heart. I won it 3 years in a row at one point, and it was just a race I went into with extreme confidence. Like you can always be beaten. Like racing is there's a lot of variance in racing, but I knew going in that I was the best guy most of the time, and there were years I went in, I knew I was the best guy, and I didn't win. So just that track is very specific. The dirt is the tackiest dirt you'll ever find at any race, bar none, period. Like I say that with a lot of experience in that arena as far as different countries, different continents, different dirt. There is no dirt that is as sticky and tacky as Stuttgart, but that was a big reason why I was able to win that race. That was a very good dynamic for me. I rode high traction environments really, really well. But I mean, it's been a long time since I raced that race. It's been since 2013 that I raced Stuttgart, and I won the no, Dortmund. I won the final night. Stuttgart, what did I get there the last year? Third, maybe. Um, but I mean, if I walked into the arena, it's amazing. It would feel like no time has passed at all, right? I'm nowhere near prepared to go race anything like that, nor would I have any fantasies of doing it. But mentally, it would come back really fast. Like those thoughts, those feelings that like I would instantly kind of like a seriousness would come over me because I knew it was kind of go time. It's just funny. Like I'm sure people can relate to it. You can see something or walk into a place, and it could be 10 years, 20 years, and you can immediately teleport yourself back to a certain time and place in your life because it's so familiar to you.
Yeah, it's really cool, mate. Great stories and great memories there. And obviously, any final thoughts as we wrap this one up, mate? Obviously, Paris Supercross preps in full swing. You'll be on commentary there with Paul making the trip over, mate. That's sort of come up really quick, hasn't it? It's always a brilliant event. So lots to go on in the next couple of weeks for you, isn't there, mate?
Yeah, it's I'm excited. I go to Florida for our annual NBC and Feld Summit, they call it, where basically everybody gets in a room from myself to the NBC executives to the MX Sports crew to the Feld all the Feld team, all the broadcast talent, Ricky Carmichael, James Stewart, myself, Will Christian, Justin Brayton. I don't know if he's going to make it back. Probably not. But Jason Wygant, everybody involved, every invested party across the board from SMX, period, gets in a room for 2 days and we go over everything good and bad about the sport. How can we be better? How can we improve the viewing experience? How can we improve the racing stuff? Like it's a really productive time. So that's next week. And then I leave straight from there to go to Paris. And I'll be alongside Paul Malin, as you mentioned, which is going to be great fun. I've never gotten the opportunity to do television for Paris. I've raced it many times, but that'll be a new experience for me. And other than the flying all over the world, I'm very much looking forward to it.
It's going to be awesome. And yeah, all the best for a busy week ahead, mate. It's been great to get you on this podcast. So thanks again for taking the time to join us. And massive shout out to Fly Racing and Firepower for sponsoring this episode and making it happen. Go check them out online on your social media to see why they're so highly regarded and check out all their excellent offerings. So thanks again, JT. Been another awesome podcast. And we look forward to catching up next week.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.